As more details come out of Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is taking on a lot of intense criticism from Israelis for failed security measures and basically taking his eye off the ball prior and during the surprise Hamas attack.
This comes after months of intense protests inside Israel over Netanyahu's controversial judicial overhaul. All that has gone away. Israel's completely united right now. But on the political situation, following on after the terrorist attacks, let's bring in Marwan Muasher, Jordan's former foreign minister, Jordan's first ambassador to Israel. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Ambassador.
Ambassador, do you think that this will be the end of Netanyahu's government? Can he survive this politically?
I do think it is the end. It is not going to happen quickly. Israel has formed a national unity government, so in the short term, the government stays in power. But we have seen this before. The October 73 war, after a few months, led to the resignation of Golda Meir and Moshe Dayan at the time. And I think the Israeli public, which already has a lot of problems with Mr. Netanyahu over his rightist government, is not going to forgive him for what has happened in the last few days. So if I am to predict whether Mr. Netanyahu will be here next year this time, I think he will not.
Mr. Muasher, can I ask how you felt when you heard of these attacks? The Hamas attack, so depraved and so grotesquely bloodthirsty. Are you concerned, from your perspective, that this damages the struggle for justice and statehood for Palestinians?
This cycle of violence is not the first time. I mean, I might be surprised. We are all surprised by the size of what has happened, but I don't think we should be surprised by the fact that it did happen. Remember, Gaza has been locked up in a big prison for the last 20 years with no political lifeline, no political horizon for a settlement. And so I don't think it's a surprise that in the end, people are not going to behave nicely when they are locked up for 20 years. The problem today that we face is this cycle of violence, killings on both sides, civilian killings on both sides, I'm afraid is going to continue until the international community addresses the root cause of the problem, which is that we have an occupation, and it is the longest occupation in modern history. And that problem has to be solved. There has to be a political process that is not open-ended, but that ends the occupation of Israel, of Palestinian land. If that happens, then we see peace in the region. Until we do, I'm afraid the cycle of violence will continue.
Well, do you think a two-state solution, which was the hope for so many years, is still possible in the Middle East, so changed in recent years by Israeli policy under Netanyahu and by what Hamas is all about in Gaza?
Look, I've long I was of the view that the two-state solution is over. Today you have 750,000 settlers in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. You have an Israeli government which is not interested in peace. You have a very weak Palestinian leadership. And you have a United States which is preoccupied with other things. The fact of the matter is that we have not had a political initiative for the last 10 years. Today, the two-state solution is no longer a possibility because it is premised on the fact that you can separate the two communities. Today, that separation has become impossible.
You know, you mentioned this just a minute ago. Clearly, there needs to be an all-out international response here. You were Jordan's first ambassador to Israel during a historic peace deal. What do other Arab countries need to be doing right now that could support that international response?
Look, we've seen situations in the Middle East historically when crises like this have led to political breakthroughs. So the October 73 war led to peace between Egypt and Israel. The first Intifada and the first Gulf War led to the Madrid Peace Conference. I'm afraid today the situation is different. As I said, you have a radical Israeli government not interested in a political solution. You have a weak Palestinian leadership which has lost even more legitimacy among its people after the Hamas operation. And you have a United States administration which is preoccupied with presidential elections next year and in no way is interested in starting a political initiative today. So I'm afraid the stars are not aligned for people to come forward and say, enough is enough, let us sit down and try to find a solution to the conflict. And I'm afraid that this particular situation today is going to be prolonged. Israel has not come into Gaza yet. We're going to see thousands and thousands of civilian casualties, but with no end in sight. That is my main concern today. There does not seem to be, a pathway to a political settlement anytime soon.
That's depressing, that's for sure. And I want to ask you about that because you were ambassador, as Kira says, when it felt like there was hope, right? It wasn't all hunky-dory, but it did seem like there was
progress.
Hope. There was progress. And you're saying that you don't see it.
Yes, it was a completely different era, Terry. You had a U.S. president who was very involved, very interested in peace, President Clinton. You had Prime Minister Rabin of Israel, who also was very interested in peace. And you had the Palestinians, Arafat at the time, and the whole Arab world, which went to Madrid, trying to find a political settlement. All the stars were aligned in the 90s towards a settlement. That is not the situation today, of course. In the 90s, what was promised with the Oslo process is a 5-year-old process that was supposed to end negotiations between the two parties and come to an agreement that would hopefully result in a two-state solution. We are 30 years today away from Oslo, and the situation is far farther than when it started. As I said, the number of settlers today is 750,000 people. 25% of the West Bank is today, a settler community. It is almost impossible to separate the two communities.
It's interesting you talk about that time, and we remember the photo op there at the White House where you saw Clinton, you saw Rabin, you saw Arafat. Right, shaking hands. That was a really remarkable moment, and I think for all of us. What do you think happened? What makes that time, that period, so different to what we're seeing now? Because let's not forget, there were a lot of bombings and killings and chaos at that time too. I mean, I remember interviewing Arafat. Never had the chance to interview Rabin in the middle of absolute chaos, but that moment did happen. We saw the handshakes. You witnessed that. You were a part of that. What has happened that has led to this moment now? What's so different?
Well, what has happened is people lost hope that there is a political horizon in sight. I want to take you back to the Oslo process again, which was supposed to end in 1999, hopefully with the establishment of a two-state solution. 30 years later, not only do we not have a two-state solution, but people on both sides, Palestinians and Israelis, have lost hope that we can arrive at such a political settlement. I think Oslo's major shortcoming is that it did not freeze settlement activity. And I often joke that the situation today is akin to two people arguing over a slice of pizza while one of them is eating it. It doesn't happen, peace cannot come about if we are not able to separate the two communities, if the Palestinians are not able to establish a credible Palestinian state on their soil. When people lose hope, this is what happens. I think that once again, as far as this might seem, but unless we tackle the root cause, which is the occupation, the cycle of violence will only continue.
Well, we really appreciate you being with us, Marwan Muasher, Jordan's first ambassador to Israel. former minister in Jordan, vice president of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. That was really very helpful to us and our audience. We really appreciate it.
And I hope we can continue the conversation with you. We'd be very grateful, Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.